Our topic today has to do with the equivalence between fractions, decimals, and percents. The essential questions are, how do you convert a decimal to its equivalent fraction? And how do you convert a fraction to its equivalent decimal? So to go from a decimal to its equivalent fraction, knowing how to say numbers and say their place value is very important. So here's a place value reminder. Notice how we have a pretty large number right here. When we say this number out loud, to say it correctly, what I would do is, well, look at its place value first. We got to know the decimal's right there, so everything to the left of the decimal are whole numbers. To the right are those decimal pieces, the fractional pieces. So to say this out loud, you would say 6 million, and you'd say this next chunk, 437,162. Okay? So go ahead and look at that place value right there. Directly to that left of that decimal is ones, then tens, then hundreds, then thousands, then 10,000s, then 100,000s, then millions. Also notice that every 3 digits from the right, is going to be a comma. Okay? Every 3 digits from the right is going to be a comma. So 3 digits, comma, 3 digits, comma. Okay? And when you see the decimal, you want to say and. Don't ever say point. In a math class, you want to say and. Okay, and then notice right here that first digit to the right of that decimal is a tenths, then hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths. Okay? The main difference between the left and the right, you'll notice that this says tens, but this says tenths. It ends with a th. Everything to the right of the decimal ends with a th. Okay? So to say this number out loud, you would say 6,437,162 and say this out loud, 4,326 10,000ths. Use this as a guide to help you complete this bottom section right here, because we're going to be converting from decimals to fractions. So these bullet points indicate the steps. So when you see a decimal, you just say it out loud and say it the correct way. Don't you dare say negative 2.5, okay? You would say negative 2 5/10. Okay? And then after that, write down what you said. I said negative 2 5/10. Then I want you to simplify the fraction. So this simplifies down to negative 2 1/2. Okay? So here is its decimal form. Here is its fraction form. The next one is 6 25/100ths. And now write down what you said. 6 25/100ths. Don't forget to simplify. So this would divide by 25, divide by 25. It'd be 6 1/4. This one is negative 1 1/100th. So write down what you said, negative 1 1/100th. That's already simplified. Right here, don't say 0.6 because you won't be able to write it as a fraction. You need to say 6/10. 6/10. Simplify it. Divide by 2, divide by 2. And you get 3/5. Right here, say it correctly. 60 hundredths. Remember, it's the hundredths place. Hundredths. Let's go ahead and simplify that. I'm going to divide by 10, divide by 10. You get 6/10. I can simplify it further, divide by 2, and get 3/5. Okay? Notice that these fractions simplified to the exact same number, so these fractions are all equivalent. Well, if their fractions are all equivalent, then of course their decimals are equivalent. So these two numbers are also interchangeable. For your summary, I want to know what place value does the 4 have in this number? What place value is that for? Our next section has to do with converting fractions to decimals. So we're going the other way, okay? And here's the directions. This bullet point tells you what to do. Divide the numerator, which is the top number, by the denominator, bottom number. Always take the top divided by the bottom, okay? So in a previous lesson, I've shown you how to take a fraction and simplify it all the way down. And yeah, you can do that if you want, but I want you to write it as a decimal. So to go from a fraction to a decimal, you always take the numerator divided by the denominator, okay? Always the top divided by the bottom. So this is what it'll look like. 8 divided by 40. Well, 40 doesn't go into 8. 40 goes into 80 2 times. 40 times 2 is 80. Subtract. 80 minus 80 is 0. 40, oh, there's no remainder, so that's our decimal. Right here. You could write it like that, or you could write it with the 0 in front of it. Doesn't matter, okay? Negative 1 divided by a positive 9. So a negative divided by positive, I already know the answer is going to be negative, okay? But for the sake of dividing using long division, I'm just going to make everything, I'm going to pretend that, I'm going to pretend it's positive. 9 doesn't go into 1, but 9 goes into 10 one time. Oops. That's going to be 1. 9 does not go into 1, but it goes into 10. Okay, so I've gone a couple and I'm seeing a pattern here. I see that it's going to be ones repeating right here. So my decimal is going to be negative 0.1 repeating. Okay, that little bar above it means that's gonna be, the next number is gonna be 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 forever. Okay. 1 2/5. Well, when you're confronted with a mixed number like this, to divide it in order to get the decimal, I would turn it into an improper fraction. So 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. Keep the same denominator, 7/5. Okay? So divide. How many times does 5 go into 7? Goes in 1 time. It's 2. 5 doesn't go into 2, but it would go into 20, sorry. 5 times 20 is 4. 5 times 4 is 20. And then subtract. 5 does not go into that. Oh, and there's no remainder, so that's going to be our decimal. Okay. Oh, look, it's going to be, designate one of them as a negative. Don't make them both negative because that's going to change the value. So let's make it negative 3 divided by 4. And a negative divided by a positive is going to give me a negative answer. So I know the answer is going to be negative. But for the sake of long division, I'm just going to make it positive. 4 does not go into 3, but it's going to go into 37 times. Don't forget to bring that decimal straight up. 30 minus 28 is 2. 4 doesn't go into 2, but it goes into 20 5 times. Okay, look, there's no remainder, so that's our decimal. Okay? Remember, it's going to be negative because of over here. I just made it positive right here, just, I don't know, to save myself some trouble. All right, for your summary, there is a correction I want you to make before doing it. Please cross off the word tenths, and I want you to write hundredths instead. Okay, so your summary says, what is each as a decimal rounded to the hundredths place? And yes, you can use a calculator. So when you get your answer, get your decimal and make sure you round it to the hundredths place, okay? So for this first example, 4/51, to do this, to turn this into a decimal, we would take the numerator divided by the denominator, and you are allowed to use a calculator. So here we go, 4 divided by 51, okay? And you see you'd get this. But since the directions say to round it to the nearest hundredths place, here's what you would do. This first spot right there, that's the tenths place. This next place right here is the hundredths place, okay? So your answer would need to look like this. However, to round, here is what you need to do. you look at the place value directly behind the one you're interested in. So yes, I'm interested in the hundredths place, but we're going to look at the thousandths place, okay? So if this number behind it is 5 or above, this 7 will turn into an 8, okay? So look at that. Yep, that number is 5 or above, so this answer right here would be this. Okay, so see what we did here? We rounded it to the nearest hundredths. Got it? Now, if this number behind it was below 5, then it would just be this, okay? Since the number behind it is 5 or above, this 7 goes 1 higher to 8, all right? Now do the next two correctly, okay? Make sure you're rounding to the hundredths. Converting decimals to percents. And I just switched my pen simply because this pen was kind of dying, okay? All right, here's the steps. Multiply the decimal by 100. So you take your decimal, multiply it by 100. After you multiply it, put a percent sign right after it, okay? That's exactly what you do. So we're going to take this number and we're going to multiply a negative 821 thousandths times 100, and we're going to get a negative 82 1/10%. Don't forget to put the percent sign right there, okay? And I want to show you a fast way to multiply by 100, okay? So you're going to start off and you're going to write down what you see, the decimal, okay? And did you know if I move the decimal place one place to the right and make it negative 8.21, that's the same as multiplying it by 10? Let me go ahead and show you. But I know you're thinking, I thought we were supposed to multiply it by 100. But bear with me, okay? So, got that, right? If I multiply it by 10, it would be, the decimal would be one place over. It'd be negative, I'm going to say it wrong, negative 8.21, okay? But I want to multiply it by 100. So if moving it one place to the right multiplies by 10, moving it one more place to the right would be multiplying it by 100. Let me go ahead and show you. So I'm going to write the original one. Oops. There's the original, I'll make a negative. And I'm going to multiply it by 100. There we go. That's the same as moving the decimal place two places to the right, okay? So look what I do. Move it one, that's timesing by 10, that's timesing by 100, so negative 82.1 would be multiplying it by 100. Then at the end, slap a percent sign, okay? Try it right here. That's multiplying it by 10, that's multiplying it by 100. Ooh, there's an empty, so you got to fill it in with a 0. So it'd be like that. And then we're multiplying that number by 100. Now slap a percent sign. That's a giant percent. Okay, right here, write down what you see. That's the same as multiplying by 10. But we're multiplying by 100, so the decimal would go right there. Okay, and then slap a percent sign on it. Write down what you see. Multiply by 10, and then multiply by 100. Boom, go right there. And now put a percent sign. Ooh, this next one. If you're confronted with just a plain old number and you don't see a decimal, don't panic, because there's a decimal right there. We're just too lazy to write it. Okay, so there's really a decimal right there. If there's no decimal that you see in a number, the decimal is always at the very, very end. We just don't typically write it. Okay. So write down what you see, put that decimal there, and multiply it by 10 would be 60, but we will multiply it by 100. So fill in those empties, and you would get 600, okay? Which would be 600%. So right here, we're just going to write down what I just said about this little trick up there, this little fast way. We're going to write down multiplying by 10 is the same as moving the decimal one place to the right. Hold on, I wrote it nicer. I want to look at my old notes. Okay. So multiplying a number by 10, any number by 10 is the same as moving the number's decimal one place to the right. So if I gave you, for example, okay, 4 7/10, but I want to multiply it by 10. What would that be? Let me show you on the calculator. 4.7 times 10. It'd be 47. So the way that I'm trying to explain in a sentence right here is multiplying a number by 10 is the same as moving its decimal one place to the right. So I'm moving one place to the right, boom. And now the decimal's at the end, just like 47, okay? So knowing that, if you want to multiply a number by 100, then move its decimal 2 places to the right. So if you want to multiply a number by 100, you can just move its decimal 2 places to the right. Okay? So let me do like a little example right here. If I had 4 7/10 and I want to multiply it by 100, let me show you what the calculator would say. I'm supposed to get 470. But what I just showed you is to multiply it by 100, you just go 1 place and 2 places and fill it in, so it'd be 470, and the decimal's right behind it, okay? All right. So this next section, it's just going to involve some practice, and I do want you to pause the video if possible, so you could try to do it on your own, but of course you can watch it also, but I do want you to practice it. Fill in each blank for each row to practice finding equivalence between the fraction, decimal, and percent. So it's fractional form, decimal form, and percent form. So this row would all be equal to each other, okay? So fraction to a decimal. You need to go numerator divided by denominator. 3 doesn't fit, 5 does not fit into 3, but it fits into 30, 6 times. No remainder, so that right there is a decimal. Okay, to go from a decimal to a percent, we just talked about it right up there. So I'm going to write it right here, and I need to go multiply it by 100. So multiply by 10, multiply by 100, fill it in, slap a percent sign, okay? Because we just went 6/10 times 100, and we got that. Okay, 1.5. See how I said it incorrectly? That's not going to help me write it as a fraction. Say it correctly, 1 5/10. And I do like when you simplify, so that's really 1 1/2, okay? So to go from a decimal to a percent, we just take that decimal and multiply it by 100, or you could do that thing where you multiply by 10, multiply by 100, fill it in, and slap a percent sign right there. You only need to fill it in if there's like an empty, okay? See how there's like an empty space? Put a 0 there. Okay? Ooh, backwards here. 90. They give you 90%. So you should know that there's a decimal right there. So to go backwards, if we moved 2 places to the right to go from a decimal to percent, to go from a percent to a decimal, you go 2 places back. Okay? Like that. And you could have also said this also, okay? Because they're equal to each other. All right, now let's say it out loud. 90 hundredths. Write down what you said. 90 hundredths. Now simplify it. Divide by 10, divide by 10. That's going to be 9/10. Oh, just like that. Okay? For this summary, I want you to write each as its equivalent percent. So what is 44 hundredths as a percent? What is 5/10 as a percent? What is 4/5 as a percent? So you need to be able to convert amongst fractions, decimals, and percents. And you want to do that you want to be pretty fluid with that, okay? Fluent with that. And I have this little flow chart to kind of help you, but really, you just kind of need to memorize it, okay? And hopefully it starts to make sense as you practice. So we do have an example right here. We have an example, and I use 3/4 as the example. So we're going to go through, and I'm going to show you how to use that example right there and how to read this flow chart, okay? Because I know it's probably overwhelming looking at all these, this triangle shape and all those words and stuff. So if we start out with 75 hundredths, multiply the to go from a decimal to percent. Look at the little arrow right here. To go from a decimal percent, and I'm going to show all my work in this blue color, okay? Multiply the decimal by 100. So here is the decimal, and you're going to multiply it by 100. And you can do the thing I taught you, but I'm just going to show you on a calculator just so it's faster, okay? And you see we get 75. But don't forget to put the percent symbol because you want it as a percent. So that's how they went from this to this, okay? Now if you had a percent and you wanted it to, in the directions, wanted you to take that percentage and make it a fraction. Or your mind wanted you to make it a percent to a fraction, okay? It doesn't have to be directions. Set the percent number as the numerator. Okay, look at it. Percent number 75, we gotta set that as a numerator. Set 100 as a denominator. Now simplify. Okay, so let's divide by 25, divide by 25. 75 divided by 25 is 3. 100 divided by 25 is 4. So see how we got this as the answer, from percent to a fraction. Okay, now let's say you wanted, for some reason, you needed to go from a fraction to a decimal. So you would follow this little old line right here. My work's also going to be in the same color for your reference. So divide the numerator by the denominator. So I need to go 3 divided by 4. 4 does not go into 3. 4 goes into 30 7 times. 4 does not go into 2, but it'll go into 20. And it goes in 5 times. 4 times 5 is 20. There's no remainder. So that right there is the fractions decimal version. That fraction that's it as a decimal right there, okay? Okay, now let's go the other way to go from a percent to a decimal. So we have this percentage, we want to make it a decimal. You just divide the percent number by 100. So take your percent number and divide it by 100. Okay? So you could do your long division if you want, but I'm going to do it really quick. 75 divided by 100 is 75 hundredths. Okay? What we got right here. Now let's say you want to go from, you want to take your decimal and make it a fraction. All you do is say the decimal out loud properly. Write down what you said, then simplify it. 75 hundredths. Okay, and then simplify it. That simplifies divided by, simplify it, let's divide by 25. Divide by 25, divide by 25, we get 3/4, which is what we got right here. Okay, and last but not least on this little flow chart here, to go from a fraction to a percent. So like if you, on a test, you got 3 out of 4 correct, and you want to know, well, what percentage is that? This is what you would do. Multiply the fraction by 100, simplify that, then put the percent symbol. Okay, so multiply the fraction by 100. So 3 times 100 is 300, 4 times 1 is 4, and then we need to simplify that. You can go 300 divided by 4, that's 75. Oh, 300 divided by 4 is 75. And then put the percent symbol. just like what we got right there, okay? Okay, pause the video, see if you can do this by yourself. Here's what you should get as your answers. Decimal to a fraction, say it out loud, 60 hundredths. Simplify it. There we go. Okay, let's go ahead and get the percentage. I'm going to take the decimal, multiply it by 100. That's what you should get. Fraction. I have a fraction, I'm going to go fraction to a decimal. Numerator divided by denominator. Okay, that is your decimal. And multiply that by 100 to get the percentage. And remember to put the percent sign. Okay, to go backwards here, there's really decimal there. Boom, boom, 0.55, that's the decimal, 55 hundredths. Say it out loud to get the fraction, 55 hundredths. Simplify it down, 11 twentieths. I got 11 twentieths because I divided the numerator and the denominator by 5. Okay, right here, same thing. So it'd be 0.4 or 40 hundredths, same thing. And let's go ahead and make it a fraction. Say it out loud correctly. 40 hundredths. Simplify it down, or you could have said 4 tenths. Divide by 10, divide by 10. Divide by 2, divide by 2. There we go. Okay. For this summary, I want you to write each as a simplified fraction. So what is this as a simplified fraction? What is this as a simplified fraction? What is this as a simplified fraction? And what is this as a simplified fraction?